Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock.
We're back. Yeah.
After 2 weeks, you gave me like the hardest fucking countdown ever, but I think we did it.
Yeah. Well, in my defense, the countdown part was normal. It was
We're going live in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hey, it's as good as I can do after having 2 weeks off.
Yeah, we lost all sense of timing, all sense of.
I don't even know where I'm at or what we're doing. Is this a podcast?
I'm glad you asked. This is the Girls Club, hosted by Ben and Steve. No.
Well, that's like the most internet thing ever. We should start a show called The Girls Club, and then it's just two guys.
My mom actually told me somebody from her work, like in town, there's like a women's club thing, and like she got invited to it, and the president of this club is some like dude, just some lawyer. And I was like, I couldn't write a tweet funnier than that.
Although that's genius if you're like single, like you just start because you don't have to like necessarily even say who you are. Be like, oh, the new women's club in town.
I don't know. I feel like you're signing up to just be hated by multiple women at that point.
True.
Because you're the president of something, that means you're probably not doing a good job. 99% of presidents do not do a good job.
Well, in fairness, even the ones that do, like, it's generally not like a likable job.
No, but, you're well, because that's what's fucked up about politics and power and stuff. Is like only fucked up people want that kind of shit.
Yeah,
because everybody will hate you. Because there's like probably 2 people in the world equipped to actually do a job like that.
Yeah, I 100% think that's one of the biggest problems with politics is the only kind of people that want to put up with it are the wrong kind of people for politics, because you only want to do that if you want it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
But, so welcome to our Polititalk Girls
well,
Club.
As you can see, that time off we learned nothing about keeping our political thoughts to ourselves and decided we'll just do a whole show about it.
Yeah.
No, this is the Non-Essential Podcast, back again. And every week we tell each other stories, and usually they take effort, but in my case, usually they don't. And I grab a creepypasta. You would think after 2 weeks I wouldn't do that, but you don't know me very well.
I was 100% expecting it and kind of looking forward to it, to be
I
honest.
wanted, like, blah, blah, work has been exhausting, life's been weird. It's been...
You're like, I didn't have to talk to Steve for 2 fucking weeks. I was partying, like...
No,
you're probably living it up.
I fucking wish. I had to go into work on the weekend. And that
sucks.
I got cornered. It was like I got really good at saying no over email, but we did a whole meeting, and it was like that television cliche of like everybody being like, yeah, let's come in on Saturday. And then they all turned to me in unison. And I wasn't prepared for that type of pressure.
I've got a massive dump to take on Saturday. I'm busy.
I bet if I do that, they would never ask again. Like, I don't think so. I'll be crapping all day. So
look, I hold it in all week.
Friday night's Taco Bell and beer night, and that's
got to go somewhere.
And I will be here, but I will be in our bathroom making shit happen. So yeah, but I selected this creepypasta last week when I thought we were doing a show, and I don't remember what I picked or like anything about it.
Well, good. So those are my favorites because then it's a surprise to both of us.
Yeah, I'm usually always I go in a little blind, but this one fucking no idea. And this is by a user named RedNovaTyrant, and it's called Blood Artist.
I feel like we've done a RedNovaTyrant. Maybe not.
It sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I could look it up, but no. I'm busy telling you this story. Ah, you've arrived right on time. Cale Herbert. That's something about the name Cale.
Kale, like the leafy green.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Herbert, like herbs. And then Bert. So his name's Bert, but he just likes like greens and herbs. Yeah,
that sounds like a stoner nickname.
Yeah.
My name's Herbert, but you can call me Cale.
Because I like the leafy greens, man.
Cale Herbert smiled at me, reaching out with his free arm to gesture me inside his extravagant home. He used his body to hold the doorway open, and I stepped inside, thanking him. His face was still quite as pale as when we had first met, but there was an energy to him that made him look well as one could be after having survived an attempt on their life. So this already took a twist?
Yeah, but I mean, like, okay, say somebody attempts to shoot me, but completely 100% misses. Like, I think pretty quickly I'd look well. Like, 'cause you can have an attempt on your life that doesn't physically hurt you in any way.
But it would fuck you up. Maybe not you.
Yeah, probably not. I don't know. I think I'd be fucked up. Like, I can't believe they missed. Jeez.
I feel like you would get shot in the shoulder like RoboCop and just like keep fucking without like the pursuit of justice or any will to fight back. You would just like not acknowledge you've been shot.
I had a dream like that right before. It was probably right after our last recording where I think I said something on Twitter about it because at first I only kind of remembered parts of them because I had two dreams in the same night and one of them I was like murdered in. The other one though, there was like a guy that like we were just like in a parking lot somewhere and the guy got pissy and pulled out a pocket knife, like just your cliche like Swiss Army pocket knife, and like just jammed it into my arm. And it was just sticking out, and I just, like, looked at him like, what the fuck? And then that freaked him out, so he ran away. And I think that one stems from a story I had actually heard about a guy that, like, somebody tried to mug him. He was waiting for a bus, and they tried to they really tried to murder him. He hit the dude in the head with a fucking hatchet. And the guy that got hit with the hatchet just, like, turned around with his hatchet sticking out at the top of his head and was like, what the hell?
You got?
And
that would freak me out.
Yeah, and so the guy that tried to rob him just took off. And from what I remember the story, it's something I saw on TV. I don't know if the guy that got attacked even like went to the hospital right away until like the bus showed up and we were like, no. And like the whole time, like
you
he
hit
was
him
just normal.
You hit him in the one part of the brain that like he can't comprehend things.
Yeah, well, that was the funny. Yeah, that's exactly like it, and he wasn't in pain because he was in shock. Like his body, like mentally, he wasn't in shock because he didn't know what fucking happened. But his like body went into shock.
It probably like his body just acknowledged it as if you tapped him on the shoulder.
He said it was like hello. He thought the guy punched him is what it was because of course he felt the force of the like the hatchet because it's not like it just slips in there easy.
Do you ever like read stories like that and just like I think about that a lot when like you hear about somebody getting shot or something and like there's probably a moment before the pain briefly where you just feel air where there shouldn't be air, you know? Like
you're like, hey, my internal organs are cold.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Ooh, who let that chill into my brain? Like that's
So a little bit of a sidetrack there, but I think that's where the dream came from. Yeah. But it was exactly like that.
But I imagine that happening to you, and like I imagine like top government scientists being like, if we could just get him to give a shit, you'd be the toughest man. You'd be the toughest soldier we had, but he just doesn't care.
But the problem is, it'd be tough from a like I don't care standpoint. Like, oh, I got shot, so what? But it wouldn't be tough from it. They'd be like, okay, now take this 8-pound gun and march for 30 miles. And
that's where the toughness, like you're tough enough to sustain any punishment, but the moment they try to get you to like lift weights or become like a more like combative soldier, you would never do it.
You'd be like, sounds like a lot of work. Like
it's a Sunday. I'm going to the park.
Anyway, so this guy's had an attempt on his life, but he looks healthy and virile and
he's brought this narrator to his place. So, thank you, Mr. Herbert, I replied, taking in the grandeur of his estate. Kel Herbert was one of the city's finest artists, known for painting fantastic works for display at the local museum. The slow but steady pace he released new works kept the attention of the masses. Perhaps it also helped that all the other artists in the area were too frightened to even dare to try. Many collectors tried to buy off his pieces, but he only let a select number leave his grasp from time to time to make ends meet. He claimed that he always put a part of his soul into every piece, and that he'd have no soul left if he sold them all off. I'd believe it, the way he used color and brushstrokes to glorious detail. There was an unimaginable amount of love and effort put into everything he did. So, I can't relate to this guy at all. This podcast is proof that we just shit things out all the time.
I'm just picturing this being that, Garfield minus Garfield guy.
Everything, every removal, pristine. Still, I couldn't help but wish he'd paint a picture for me to keep too. So, as a fan of his work, I was immensely excited for having the opportunity to interview him tonight. Dinner is just about ready. You'll have to forgive me for not having it done sooner, Cale stated, before closing the large wooden door behind me. Oh, it's really no trouble. I'm surprised as it is you were still willing to cook in the first place. What with your injury and all. My eyes drifted from his face down to his forearm, wrapped in bandage and cradled in a sling. My heart skipped a beat when I saw the blood stain on it. Cale must have noticed my face. It's just paint. I was just doing a quick landscape before you arrived. Care to see it? My answer was obvious. No.
Hells yeah.
Fuck no, dude. I don't give a shit. I'm in your house now.
I'm here for the food, not the paintings, bitch.
You invited me into your house as like a vampire, except I just squat until you leave the house to me. Cale chuckled lightly, then motioned for me to follow. We walked down the corridor, passing many murals and landscapes that I had never seen before. Exquisite hues and technique filled my eyes, and I had to keep myself from simply standing still and letting them swallow me into their worlds. The subjects and themes of these works were still similar to those Cale would put on public display. Mostly people in their day-to-day struggles, usually exaggerated with ironic sentiments, such as a man carving off a chunk of his own flesh within his rundown house.
A little exaggerated, yeah.
Yeah. A pile of bills stained in his blood with his family watching from another room. Another painting depicted a woman screaming in agony while every joint in each of her arms were being I thought it said pooped apart. It's popped apart.
Poop's always funny.
I was about to really compliment the writing, but they went the safe route with popped. I actually really like how this was written so far. Arms were being popped apart, deforming her. She was holding on to something on both sides, slowly being dragged away into the darkness of the painting. In one hand, dollar bills scratched at the inside of her fists and let crimson river pour from them. In her other, her fingers dug into a loaf of artisan bread, just about ready to break off from her. It was the gritty depiction and familiar pain of those average difficulties that really enraptured his audience, myself among them.
I can't tell you how many times I've gone to the store to buy some artisan bread and
got fucked up,
joints pooped apart.
Yeah, I'm tired of buying bread from the store and it turning into a Hellraiser movie. And just like hooks come out and shit.
And no, I do get I like the symbolism, even like as described in these fictional paintings, because you can see what they'd be going for, and it very much fits. But at the same time, I'm already kind of exhausted by this whole like art scene crowd, because it's like the recluse that only lets so many people see his paintings, and like I couldn't wait to get invited to his plate, and it's like like I don't know, it's just so exhausting to me, because so much of art is like this just
clicky.
weird, yeah, like almost completely artificial weirdness. Like it's like, oh, I have to be this.
But it's kind of like a chicken or the egg thing, like where it's like, you know, do like artists, like subcultures group together and like reinforce their weirdness, or were they already like weird people and like,
well, it's not even
you
the
know,
weirdness,
and it's just they kind of
the
found something they all bond into.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even so much the individual eccentricities of the artist, because I think it's a lot what you just said. Like, it's just but it's more this, like, how one artist can become this, like, almost like urban legend artist, and then somebody else that technically in their art is just as good, but for some reason everybody's like, oh, no, that's no good. It's like, it's so, like, just random.
I mean, art is always subjective, and there's always a sense of, like, you know, fame and status dictating the reception that a lot of shit gets. It's why there's like so much like fucking god awful music in the mainstream, but it's like, you know, they maybe had a good song once and it propelled them to such heights that now it's like every album they put out, we gotta pretend like it's fucking solid gold, and really it's like dog shit. I'm not basing that off of anybody like specifically. It's just
I was thinking just about everybody except for Limp Bizkit. They've never had a bad song or
no,
album.
and they're probably the most authentic. To this day, it's all about the he said, she said bullshit.
Yeah.
So nobody ever wore a backwards cap like he did, and we don't have artists like that anymore. Lost my spot. Soon after, Kel had led me into a separate room. It was a bit darker with the lights off, and most of the windows were blocked by curtains or bristleceboard. The only sources of light came from the two open doorways, the one we entered from and another where the smell of dinner sourced from, and the single large window that gave a wonderful view of the sun setting over the ocean. The paintings in this room were all landscapes. Not a single person could be seen on any of them, allowing one to appreciate the splendor of the environments instead. The room had a very odd smell to it, something like an artificial earthiness. That's paint thinner, dude. You didn't listen to Bob Ross. You get odorless paint thinner.
Yes.
And you huff that shit.
I was going to say, it still fucks you up. You just don't know it because you can't smell it.
I think I mentioned this, but I was on the show, but I was like watching a lot of Bob Ross to go to sleep a few months ago. And he always brings up, like, I use odorless paint thinner. And he was like, now I get questions written in sometimes, and they say, Bob, how do you know that the paint thinner is odorless? And I tell them, you know, just take a good whiff of the can right there in the hardware store. And I was like, yeah,
how many people
so
have
Bob
been
Ross
arrested?
is just huffing paint. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, it's weird. The odorless one's always about the 13th can.
Yeah. And by the time you find it, it's all good. Artificial earthiness. On an easel by the open window, there was one such painting. It was a magnificent recreation of the current sunset. The reds and oranges were intense, and the white of the sun cut through it all brilliantly. The ocean was unfinished, but the deep navy blue strokes that were on the canvas still looked nice. It's the oil paints, Cale remarked. He must have noticed my upturned nose. You get used to the strength eventually. Why is it so dark in here, though? I was seeing how it felt, just using the light of the setting sun to paint its image. It was quite relaxing. I kept down a chuckle and just nodded. I don't know why that's funny.
Artists.
What an idiot. You gotta turn the lights on to paint. And just nodded, then followed him through the other door. It led into the kitchen, as expected, which doubled as the dining room. With a massive glass wall overlooking the ocean and its cliffside, Kale invited me to take a seat at the dining table near the studio entrance, and then joined me from the other side of the table.
You know, this is a completely kind of, not really random, but at the beginning he talked about how he'll just occasionally sell paintings to make ends meet. And he's got this giant fucking, like, custom mansion on a cliffside overlooking the ocean.
Yeah.
I think ends are meeting.
Brad Pitt's just scraping by.
Right.
Just through the sheer will of his art. You know how hard it is to get a fucking oceanside property?
Especially one with a kitchen that has an entire glass wall overlooking the ocean.
Yeah.
Which is great in theory, but, like, it's horrible when, like, red tide comes in or something and you just have all these dead fish that you're looking at. Well, I don't know. He's an artist. He might
He'd
like
paint
that too.
shit, yeah.
Yeah.
He probably causes it. The plates were set and neat, with a bottle of wine waiting on his end. I would love that if he just drank wine alone, like he didn't share it.
Yeah.
He just drank from the bottle.
A bottle of wine on his end with a crazy straw sticking out of the top.
It's one of those Chewbacca straws with the hair on it. Mr. Herbert, I said, would it be all right if I start with a few questions now, if we're waiting? He shook his head and gestured with his free hand. By all means, go right ahead. Thank you. I reached into my purse and pulled out a notepad. So, you know why I'm mainly here. What was your experience with the blood artist like, if it's not too painful to go through? Kill shook his head again. I reassure you, as his only current survivor, I'm more than willing to share whatever I can to help out. You can ask me absolutely anything. Well now, let's see. I suppose he seemed to come after you after you had done that first news piece on me, Miss Jacobs. Must have been the attention that drew, same as the rest of them, right? I nodded. That does seem to be the pattern. All 4 of the other victims were getting in the spotlight very quickly, too. So why then did you keep going if you knew it would put you at risk? He shrugged. Because I wasn't appropriately scared, I suppose. Because I didn't think it could happen to me. But it did. Right you are. After painting so many normal problems and basking in their feelings, getting used to the pain of the everyday, I didn't see this criminal as a threat. I was concerned, sure, that it might happen again, but I also couldn't just leave my audience hung and dry. And this house doesn't pay for itself. He gestured upwards to the ceiling with a laugh, and I joined him in agreement. A villa...
Sorry, I'm just going to add these snooty laughs every time that they say they chuckle or laugh. That's my job.
Just add it at any point they say anything. Just assume they're always ho-ho-hoing. A villa overlooking the ocean, secluded from the rot and stink and noise of the city, was not a cheap thing. Cale sighed and slumped in his chair a bit. So there I was, in the hotel hot tub. The Goodwill, right? Yep, that's the one I stayed in. Was doing a trip around the state, another reason I thought I was safe. All of the other kills had happened in the city. Anyways, so I'm getting out of the tub when I hear the door to the pool open. I turn just to see who it is, since it was pretty late, and... Cale paused for a moment, trying to describe his attacker. He was dressed fairly normally for an artist, button-up plaid and jeans, absolutely covered in paint stains. It was the mask that made me realize, oh shit, I'm in trouble.
I was waiting for them to say afro.
That is probably the most relatable line. That is, oh shit, I'm in trouble. That's more relatable than any of his paintings.
Yeah.
I traced the air around my face with my pen, breaking from writing for a moment. Those drama masks, yeah? Yeah, the frowning theater mask. I paused my own writing. A frowning mask? All the others were attacked by a smiling man. Well, that's just it. See, my theory is that there's 2 of them. That'd explain how this one found me so quick. Cale shrugged again, raising an eyebrow as well. I can see it, yeah. The murders seem too well coordinated for it to be just one person. I flipped the page in my notepad and continued. So what happened when you saw him? Kill reached down with his left hand to pull up the side of his shirt, revealing another bandage on his left side abdomen. Bastard stuck me. I think it was a palette knife. Definitely sharper than it needed to be, I can tell you that much. Went in easy since I was still wet and relaxed from the hot water, as if you're, like, made of armor.
I was going to say
when
this,
you're not
like,
in a hot
actually
tub.
tenderize you.
I would have broke that shit off if I hadn't just been relaxed.
If I was dry and cold, my elephant skin would have...
So I fell down to the floor. He got on top of me. Gale shivered, his eyes closing for a moment. Mr. Herbert, we can stop if you like. He opened his eyes slowly, looking towards the floor blankly. That's when he pinned me and took the knife to my arm. Very slowly, goddamn. It was like I could feel every single skin fiber getting plucked apart, and every single one stung. The blood started pouring, and of course he had a bucket to start collecting. Did no one see this going on? No, like I said, it was late. So
the lifeguard, but he was some snotty...
He was just looking at
teenage
fucking
kid, like,
Jugs magazine.
Yeah.
No, like I said, it was late, so there wasn't anyone else around. I tried fighting back with my free arm, but he just jabbed me in the nose. Eyes teared up, blood pouring from there now. I'm dizzy, and he kept hitting if I moved. I remember Gale scratched his hair here and bit his lip. He brought the knife towards my nether regions at one point, but he didn't do anything there. Well, that was big of him.
Yeah.
Because, you know.
I mean, he's like... Well, maybe the painting that he was doing, like, he's like, do I need some nether region blood to paint? No, I think I'm good. Just forearm.
I think, you know, any psycho painter, serial killer could agree that the blood from that region is a very specific type of blood, and it's almost never something Bob Ross recommends on your palate, so it's not necessary.
It's not odorless.
It's odorful.
Yeah.
Why do you think they did it? Probably to get my heart racing more, to scare me, get more blood pumping, bleed me faster. If that was the reason, it worked. He leaned back, resting his head on the top of the chair while looking upwards again.
I like that theory, too. It's like, you're being killed, but you're not scared enough. Like...
I mean, that's a very universal guy thing, though, I think, is like,
well, sure.
You know, we'll
like,
cut off your balls or we'll kill you. It's like kill me.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, it's probably absurd, but, you know, we're an absurd race. He leaned back, resting his head on the top of the chair while looking upwards again. I remember getting tired, and I could barely keep my eyes open. Eventually I blacked out, and the next thing I remember was being in the hospital. I nodded slowly. All right, then. What is your opinion on his methods? As if he's going to be, I think they're good.
Yeah. Katrika, well, he's a little sloppy on the...
Yeah. If I were him, I would commit to the nether regions. Don't half-ass anything. Why do you think they're doing this the way they are, going around and draining artists of their blood? It seems very ineffective. What the ineffective? You don't know the motivation. So, seems like a dumb way to get what you want. It's like...
I mean, I suppose if at this point they think that they're just murdering them, like it is, like, you know, it'd be quicker to just, like, shoot them, but... A lot of serial killers are less about like the murder part aspect of it, and it's about the torture or doing the whatever
power dynamics. It's why, it's why almost every serial killer at least has a few victims who manage to get away, is because they're always like fucking with them and toying with them. You know?
Right? Like it's not that there aren't like serial murderers or serial killers that like just flat out shoot their victims and like run away, but even, I'd say the majority of them probably mutilate or torture, you know, their victims in some way, because that's what it's generally about, like you said.
Yeah, but and even the ones who were like, you know, on like shooting sprees. People survive that shit too.
Well, yeah, but my point is not like it's like, oh, it's weird. Like, why do you think they'd use this ineffective? Right. It's like because that's part of their thing. That's what they.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying that like that dynamic of like power and control is still there. Like, no matter how you choose to do it.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, that's
the
what
goal,
to them taking somebody's life. I mean, and it is the ultimate. Although that's what always made me think it's like the ultimate form of like kind of cowardice is because it's like anybody.
Oh yeah.
To them, it's like, it shows I can control you. It's like anybody can kill somebody. It doesn't necessarily mean you're powerful because we all have that ability.
And that's why like a lot of them are like, if you look in their regular day-to-day life, they're people with like no power whatsoever, or what little power they have, they like try to abuse as much as possible. It's because they're insecure fucking little fucking monsters.
Right.
Except for the really big ones.
Yeah. They're pretty bad, but they give us content for the show, which is kind of,
That's a fair trade. Okay, why do you think they're doing this the way they are, going around and draining artists of their blood? It seems very ineffective. Well, he seems to get massively jealous of any up-and-rising artists. Perhaps he's trying to upstage them. Upstage them how? His methods are probably excessive on purpose. It's an act. This is his own show, at least in his eyes, and he thinks it's the greatest exhibit on Earth. I tapped my pen on my pad. The admiration in Kale's voice was odd, but my anxiety was only flourished when he stared at me with those dilated pupils. I coughed to clear my throat, trying to think of the next question. So, what does he do with the blood, then? There's always a lot at the scene, but most of it, that's the mystery of it. The excitement that comes from his murders. Why did he do it? Where did the blood go? That's the thrill that entices your column readers, isn't it, Emily? Kale was leaning over the front of the table now, his bandaged arm beneath him. My suspicions towards Kale were growing ever more intense. While he might have just had some strange fascination with this murderer, considering the taste of his works were rather dark in their own respect, I couldn't help but wonder if there was another reason. And if my hunches were correct, then this was a situation I had to get myself out of quickly. Biting my lip, I tried another question. Did the idea ever come across your mind that this person may have been a copycat? Kale rested both elbows on the table and clasped his hands together. Of course. Someone else might have a taste for the blood artist's work. My attacker was definitely a copycat. They could never get it precisely right if they tried. And why would that be? Because you can't imitate perfection. A silence was born after that, and quickly grew into its uncomfortable adolescence. I slowly copied down his words, trying to avoid making eye contact with the frightening man. I scratched down notes, or at least pretended to, and flipped through my book, attempting to find another question to break the eerie quiet. The abrasive ringing of the oven did so for me, signaling that dinner was ready. As Kale stood up to get it out, I followed, clearing my throat. Would it be all right if I used your restroom before we eat? Kale smiled softly and nodded before pointing to the dining room's main entrance. Certainly.
I'm an artist. I don't have a restroom. Just pop a squat anywhere.
Just there's that bucket by the easel.
Not that one. That one's full of blood. For some
don't
reason.
do it in the odorless paint thinner. Do it in the other one. The odorful paint thinner. I nodded to thank him, then quickly shuffled past him, my purse and notepad in tow. The door opened up to the main hall, forcing me to pass by the same paintings as before. Only now, instead of just feeling a dark and surreal fascination by Kale's works, I was disturbed and uneasy. It wasn't hard to imagine the subjects of his portraits being his victims. I began to make haste for the front door when I noticed that one door was still open a bit. His studio. Though it made me sick to admit it, I wanted to see his art one last time, if he was to be arrested after I had made my report to the police. Otherwise, I might never get that feeling again, regardless of what emotions accompanied it now. I stepped inside slowly, unable to make out much of what was visible before. The sun had set during our conversation, and so it was nearly impossible to make out any of the paintings distinctly. Feeling on the wall, I felt a light switch and gave it a flip. My heart caught in my throat as it skipped several beats, impulsively. I covered my mouth to keep it from escaping. Paint cans sat on the floor with crimson drip lines running down their sides. Some were filled to the brim, others laid on their sides, the blood caramelized and crusty. A scream was finally ready to escape my lips when I felt another hand clasp my own, and a sharp kitchen knife driving itself into my back. As I struggled to escape the blood artist's grasp, more of my life fluid poured from my body, and my consciousness quickly deteriorated. I wanted my last sight to be of his art, to be of something beautiful, but all the paintings in this room are brown, even the sunset.
Well,
goddamn.
You pieced together.
I mean, that's on
and then
you.
you took one stop to like I know he's murdering people and painting with their blood, but I gotta check those paintings out again.
Yeah, that's that is the absolute cliche, like to like the extreme. That's your fault.
Yeah.
You could have left. So,
well, maybe not.
And also,
either, because he seems to be quite aware that she was onto him.
You could have tried to leave. And also, I don't know how well lived this person is, but like elementary school experience alone should tell you that wasn't acrylic paints. Like that's like paint and blood are not fucking similar at all.
I'm curious. Maybe it's like science fair experiment time. Like it did mention like the buckets were like overturned and like crusty, but like I wonder, blood coagulates pretty quickly.
Well, I wonder, that's what makes me wonder, like, well, maybe with the scent and shit, maybe it wasn't just blood. Maybe he added some shit to
mix it. Yeah.
Odorless paint thinner. Keep it liquid.
Now I'm picturing him again, because you can't picture a painter. In fact, and they should have described him as Bob Ross.
That would be fucking terrifying. Like Bob Ross in one of those theater masks, hunting you.
And he'd be like, "You are the blood artist," and he'd be like, "I'm a happy little blood artist."
I'm just gonna add
oh my god, you're Bob Ross. He'd be like, "How did you guess?"
I'm just gonna add a little gash here in your heart, and we're just gonna pop that open a little bit, and you can do whatever you want with your canvas.
I'm picturing it's like, all right, and now for the sunset, you wanna mix a little forearm blood with some nether region crimson. And just brush it in there, feather it in, and
we're gonna do small circles with our fishing knife. But I actually like that story a lot. I really liked how they wrote it.
Yeah, and it was one of those, like, the whole time, I mean, just given the title, and then they're like, yeah, the blood artist. So I showed up at this artist's house. You're like, he's the blood artist.
Yeah.
But the way that they did it with him being attacked, and I was starting to think, well, maybe he staged his own attack, and then the, like, copycat thing. I liked that. That was a twist that I didn't particularly see.
It was honestly, it was mostly just fun to read that dude's dialogue as it, like, kept going, and he got more sinister.
Yeah,
like
that too.
I didn't go into like thick character there, but it made, like, dialogue is a tricky thing to do in general, and creepypastas especially. Like we say it all the time. These are kind of quick writing exercises, so you don't put a lot of like thought in how lines are delivered a lot of times when you write these stories. And I thought they did a really good job of like. It's absolutely believable that a guy who talks like that would be a fucking serial killer.
Yeah, well, and I could even picture like this scene is played out by like two, if you got two like really good actors, almost like Silence of the Lambsy type with but like where you've got this, I don't know if she's supposed to be a reporter or an investigator, whatever.
Yeah.
But you got her, and the whole time, like, she's got this suspicion the whole time. As I always got that feeling too, like, not that she's completely naive coming in.
Yeah, she wasn't naive, but she was like,
well, that's where I'm going. Was where she, yes, a little starstruck, but also a little like she feels like her suspicions of him are secret, like that she's one step ahead, and that she's just there to kind of feel him out.
Well,
and
you
then
bring up
that
like,
slow, you get those like movie like memorable like monologues where this guy with that slow realization that, oh fuck, like A, I'm right, but B, he knows I know.
Yeah. Well, it's like you brought up Silence of the Lambs, but like in the same theme of Hannibal, like I don't know if you watched Red Dragon or the Hannibal show.
I did not.
I like them both. The Hannibal show is very cheesy, but it's pretty. I was pretty entertained by it. But the main dynamic there, even more so than like the Clarice Hannibal thing, is Will Graham and Hannibal. And Will Graham has like this in both Red Dragon and how he's depicted on the show. He has this like unyielding suspicion of Hannibal because again, he's not an idiot. Like, he can see all the pieces coming together for who the fuck that dude is, but he respects him so much that, and he's so fascinated by him that he's always like dangerously too close to him, you know, and never like quite ready to pull the trigger to be like, you're a fucking killer, you're under arrest. Yeah. And that's a fascinating relationship to me, where it's like this like repulsion, but also such a like fascination with evil that you can't turn yourself away from it. And I got that vibe a little bit reading this story. So that was well done. And yeah, and also some you kind of mentioned early on, but I think is actually really hard to do. It is pretty hard to convey paintings, I think, through words. Well, and I think really set up like that imagination. And I think it's because people, and they did a great job.
I think people do what I would probably do, and it even when it's not describing a painting in writing, I think we have a tendency, if I'm writing and I want to describe a painting, I'm going to go into too much detail about stuff that doesn't matter. Right. And I think they did a good job of just like kind of being more like, well, here's what the painting is, and there was a little bit of details where it did matter, but I could picture the pieces. Like,
yeah, because I thought they were like, that's the tricky balance to it, and I thought they nailed it in the story. Is you need to tell them what the painting shows, but let them paint it in their own mind, you know?
Yeah, because I guarantee me and you are picturing like completely different paintings, but we're both, I could picture
but we're both
theme
like
and the meaning.
Creepy. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So that was a lot of it was well done.
Yeah. Kind of an abrupt ending, but they're short stories, so that's kind of par for the course.
And really the only other way to pad that, because I liked that, like you said, I really liked that kind of reveal as he's like talking and he's like, oh yeah, but oh yeah, by the way, I really admire the blood artist's work, and it had to be a copycat because the original is perfect. And you're like, oh, yep, just what we thought. And then from there, the only way to pad that out and make it not abrupt would be to add a bunch of ultimately unnecessary, like, oh, I was running and he almost, I tried to barricade the door, but then he broke through, not a lot of real good ways, because that climax is that realization right there, and the, oh shit, I got to try to figure out a way to like get out of this without hopefully making it obvious that I'm getting out of it.
It always feels scummy when we do this, but I just thought of an ending I would have liked way better, which it would have probably raised more questions than it answered.
The Mega Man 2 ending, right?
Yeah, fuck yeah, he just walks off. No, like, what if like she got out the front door, but then the copycat killer with one mask was standing outside, and then she turned around and he was there with the other mask? and it just ended with that. And she was...
Well, but now I want that... See, I think you're implying that they're working together. I want to see them face off. I want to see Mask versus
Freddy
Mask.
versus Jason.
Yeah. And she's just there. And
I mean, this story already almost sets it up like you could tell more of this story if you wanted to. It's like, you could do that in chapter 2.
Well, or that could have been like she as the knife went into my back, like I dropped my purse and the mask falls out, and she's the copycat killer or something.
No. So he stabs her in the back, but then the copycat killer stabs him in the back.
And then Bob Ross stabs them all.
But then Bob Ross stabs him in the back, and then the detective, who's been on to all of them from the beginning, shoots Bob Ross in the back.
Yeah, it says, I was wearing my false back. Like that first, the woman that got stabbed, it was a fake back.
But his deputy, who's a big fan of the original Blood Artist, stabs him in the back. But then his trusty German Shepherd, who's always loved the detective, bites him in the throat. But the German Shepherd's old, so a vet has to put him down. But then the vet is so sick of putting dogs down that he just lets the dogs devour him one day. But then those dogs get out, and all right, I'm done.
Yeah. You got to get the whole town involved in this. It's quickly becoming a Simpsons episode or something.
So sorry, RedNovaTyrant, but I just improved your ending.
Yeah, but no, I liked it. It's funny because it's one of those. I think some of the ones that I like the most are the ones where, right from the get go, you're like, I know where this is going, and at the end, you're like, I was pretty much right, but also. Still,
but I'm glad I took this ride because you didn't do it how I totally expected,
Right.
Like you said, though, 9 out of 10 stories like that end with a way too drawn out chase scene or something,
Yeah, or a way too convoluted, like I said, like he really admired it, and then she turns out to be the killer.
I got a good ending. Another good ending. She just throws him in the oven when he goes to check the food.
You've been Hanseled and Greteled, bitch.
To just say a tribute to Sweeney Todd.
Now, the one question that I have that lingers is, did he share the wine, or was it just for him?
I bet he had 2 crazy straws, and one went all the way across the table.
That's what got her. She's like, I was about to the door, but I had to turn around to get one last sip of that sweet, sweet wine. And she sees him coming with a knife, and she's watching him, and she's watching the wine come through that crazy straw, one thing at a time. And she's hoping that it'll get, That's the dramatic tension there.
Yeah.
But
hey, that's the show. That's the story. We're back.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Wasn't sure I'd serve.
I paid off a lot of gators to take him out, but
we weren't really. We're on the coast. There's not a lot of gators on the coast. Just sharks. You paid off the wrong click.
Well, that's the problem. There's still the job's not done. The Crocs are coming for you.
They're just slow.
They're walking to Ohio.
Crocs are surprisingly fast, but that's still a long walk. So it'll be like 3 weeks from today. I'll be sitting at work, and all of a sudden, just I'll hear the door. I'm like, oh yeah, come on in. Oh!
Just ding ding. We're closed. Oh my god!
Damn it, Ben. Those will be my last words. Or I'll show up to do the show, and like you said, it'd be like the gun or the knife thing where there's just a gator clamped onto my side, and I'm just like, yeah, that kind of sucks.
That's the thing, the old death roll thing that they do when they bite into something, they'll just start flipping around and shit. It's like they would try to do that to you, you wouldn't respond, they would assume you were dead and probably just walk away.
They're like, our job here is done.
Yeah. He tastes like melancholy sports fan. Let's just leave him.
That's the thing. I was going to say that when I said you should have paid off the sharks. And it's like, maybe you did, but they were... Because we did go swimming, and at one point, we were just wading out in the ocean, and on the Gulf side of Florida, it's relatively shallow, so we're pretty well a ways out, but we're still just like barely waist deep. And I noticed we were way farther out than anybody else. It's like, huh. So they were probably out there circling, and they're like, "You bite them." They're like, "Fuck no, you bite them." It's like, no, you.
That's the thing about sharks is like, they're scary and they're depicted as monsters, but 90% of the time they're like just sort of moving around like, I'm hungry, I'm tired. It's like there's not a lot of thought process to it.
And even when they're hungry, it's not like I'm hungry. Anything I see, I'm going to eat. It's like I'm hungry, but that fleshy white blob there doesn't look very appetizing. Like,
I mean, it's pretty much like us. It's like we're hungry, but usually that means I only want one thing. So,
I was waiting for the reveal of the one thing that you want when you're hungry, but
I was trying to like keep it in the theme of a shark. Like, pretty sure a shark doesn't want a burger, but maybe they would. Maybe they'd love it.
Everybody loves a burger.
Yeah. I don't know. Sharks have those mouths though that are like fucking buzzsaw teeth. I don't know if they even enjoy food or they just like filling up.
Yeah.
And the thing about people is there's not a lot of meat.
I was going to say, though, that's why I identify with sharks, is I don't know if I like food. I just like filling up.
I like consumption.
Right. And I wonder why I can never lose any weight. It's weird.
Losing weight is a fucking myth after 30.
It is. Anyway, I don't know what the fuck we're talking about. You said we're done, and we said
we got to ramble off,
Yeah. So we'll be back next week, maybe. Maybe the gators will get me.
We don't have to promise shit.
Yeah.
That's the thrill of this show is you don't know what we'll talk about, and you don't know if we'll talk at all.
It's a pretty good guarantee that we'll talk. Like, that's the one thing that we will do. About, who knows? Anything important? No, probably not. But we'll do that. I'm going to keep talking really choppily just to give you more to cut off or leave in.